Awesome. I'm going to turn up the gain just a touch on the microphone. Perfect. And so now they can hear you. We can hear you. I think everybody can hear you. They can't see you yet, but I'll change that. So I'm going to remove that window. I'm going to add a window. Sorry for the technical difficulties, everybody. I felt like we had a really great start there, and then of course...
We did. And then things happened.
And then technology happened. And position. Wait, what? Order. Move to the bottom. Look at that. Jeez, this is almost a thing now. This is awesome.
I don't know if I'm looking classy or
super classy.
That's I'm not sure about that.
This is great. No takeover. No. Giant forehead. So I wouldn't call it a giant forehead.
Hopefully they're not talking. Hopefully they're talking about mine here. There's some shine going on. There's some sheen going on the sides here, and I'm a little concerned about, to be honest.
Oh no! Oh no! Don't see. This is why I just keep it nice and short. You know, it's just like, oh no, man, it's cool. Just cut it all off. Don't worry about it. It's the way to go.
I never do that. I have to have some hair so I can make fun of my dad.
Okay, yes, that's fair, yes. So welcome everybody once again. I guess I should do the intro again. Welcome to 2 Pixel Wide. We are here today to talk about something that has affected video games for the last while. More than just
about 2 months.
About 2 months or so. Yeah, and it's something that is really passionate. I'm very passionate about this. I know there's a lot of people that are very passionate about this. One thing I want to say, Gamergate is what we're talking about here. I don't think I actually quite said it. One thing I want to say just before we get started here is we are going to be keeping an eye on the chat. Of course, we have the chat on the stream, as always. Keep it civil, keep it nice, keep it classy. I know this topic can just get people all riled up. I'm one of those guys. If you ever see me on Twitter, holy crap. I'm an idiot. Doesn't say that. I get so riled up about so many different things. I'm going to try to keep it as civil and as awesome as possible here today. I have brought with me an expert. Would you say an expert? Are you an expert? You're the expert commentator on this. Dan, you're the expert on Gamergate. You are the one true resource. See, I
worry for us.
So, I guess I'm going to ask a question, and I'm going to let you talk. And I feel like this is a good way to get us started here. Mm-hmm. I guess maybe what we should do first is tell people what exactly Gamergate is, because I know there's a lot of people in here that's like, I don't even know what this is. What is this Gamergate stuff? So, what is Gamergate to you?
Gamergate is the culmination of 5 to 6 years of exposure of the seedier side of the game journalism market. In a nutshell, in this really tiny compressed nutshell, that's what it is.
Okay.
This has been building for quite a while.
Yes, definitely. I was talking to somebody earlier, and they basically said that the flashpoint, the beginning of this, the sort of realization of the corruption within the gaming industry really sort of started with the firing of Jeff Gerstmann at GameSpot, not like a bunch of years back in like 2008. I think that was sort of like a flashpoint to sort of get this thing kind of started. Would you agree with that, or?
That may have been the tiny pebble in the very front, but I think the real flashpoint had to be Dorito Gate.
Okay, all right, okay.
Where we had an extremely prominent game journalist sitting in front of a ton of Doritos and Mountain Dew.
Now, we're talking about Jeff Keighley, right?
Yes.
Okay. See, already I'm just getting because
I will say this beforehand. I have, because I've done research on these people and these events over the last nearly 8 years now, I have preconceptions of these people. If I bring that to the forefront, Without stating it directly, I
Oh,
apologize.
for sure, yeah.
I am to the point where I will simply speak on these events as I best know and understand them.
Yes.
Some of the time that is with preconceptions.
Oh, for sure. Oh, for sure. So I mean, maybe that's a good place to start. Is sort of trying to figure out where this all began. I mean, the real beginning of Gamergate as a hashtag has some really seedy beginnings, right?
I'm not even going to look at the hashtag.
No. Okay, that's good. The
hashtag is a distraction. Mm-hmm. It may be the label we've slapped on this, but the half of this entire thing, okay, there are two halves to this. Mm-hmm. Half of it is a distraction. Half of this is a distraction that we need to deal with, but is not the source of the problem.
Right.
So we'll deal with that. But let's rewind things in a very extreme manner and say, okay, let's start out at the very beginning with what we can understand, some base appreciated facts.
Yes.
First off, it is an assumption that gaming is generally male dominated. That is an assumption. That is not necessarily true. And facts have actually shown, as of charts that have come out in the last 5 to 6 years, showing that females are becoming a larger and larger part of the gaming community.
Yeah, I mean, it's a disputed fact, but the latest numbers you sort of look at, a lot of the latest studies that you see might suggest that it's like 49% of people playing video games are female.
Which is completely reasonable. That's
yes.
Entirely reasonable. The second thing is that females receive an unreasonable amount of harassment or abuse from a minority of the gamer or online community. We've seen this in multiple attacks on people like Anna Sarkeesian and Zoe Quinn, something that Gamergate refers directly to.
Yes.
I feel strongly enough to say that happens far too often.
Oh,
and
yes.
that deals with the distraction side of this. That isn't the actual source of the problem, but is still a problem we have to deal with. Mm-hmm. The third basic fact of the situation is that game journalism is a very mixed bag. We've all joked about, oh, this review or this part of the Metacritic score, it doesn't mean anything. They want that. And we joke about that, but that's something that actually happens. Journalism outlets receive specific copies very early on in order to give them better scores, because the companies will please these folks with early games to get the better scores, to get the higher ratings.
Okay.
That has happened far too often in the industry. Far too often. And it is a very big part of what we're actually dealing with right now. Those are the major facts of the situation that at least I'm gonna deal with and talk about. Let's move on past that though.
Okay, yeah.
Would you prefer to deal with the journalism or the sexism side of things first?
Those are two. Why don't we start, because I think we've already started talking about it. I do want to get to the sexism side of it, because that's a real important thing that I think we should discuss. But I think just sort of moving with the flow of the conversation already, let's talk the journalism.
Journalism side, okay. As I mentioned earlier, it's a known issue that certain companies will send out early copies or developer versions of products, not games only, not software, not hardware, products for better scores. It has happened repeatedly. Companies will also invest a great deal of money in certain companies or individuals, like Jeff Keighley, to get their professional words supporting their products. It has happened quite often.
So when we're talking about this, are we talking like, and I'm asking a hypothetical here, are we talking about they are shipping out, let's say, like statues or collector's editions of games, or even just early games in general? Are we to make the assumption then that is a guaranteed higher score for the game?
They do it under the implied agreement.
Okay.
That you're going to give them a high score, because the companies and review outlets that don't give them high scores don't continue to receive them.
Okay.
At all. So companies, in order to get the viewership that they want to hold on to, will naturally give these very early copies of products higher score so they can continue to get the early audience in for themselves.
Okay.
It's a business tactic. It's a business strategy.
For sure. I'm just... I want you to continue, because I feel like we're hitting in on something that is already a very dividing aspect of this, right? Because there's one side that'll just be like, look, like these guys are shipping out games. It's an assumed it's a thing that's happening where if they receive this game early, they're getting the higher scores. Whereas, I mean, if you listen to the media talk about it, it's just like, look, we take the games early because this is how the business works. This is how because we are trying to do a review to make a purchasing decision, which means that if you want to have a purchasing decision on day one, which is when the majority of the people want to buy the game, they have to have that early copy. And the way the media makes it sound, and I don't really want to take sides here, I want to sort of portray this as a even balance, even though obviously people have read my Twitter. I am on one side of this. And this is why I want to have this conversation, but the way the media talks about this is that it's something they don't like, but something that they have to deal with. The scores are not impacted, but if they break a date, that's when it becomes bad for them. Like the publisher does have a bit of a step on them, but I don't think it relates to the score given necessarily, because like there is some things bad that happen when scores are given. That has been a proven thing that happens every once in a while, but I don't think that's every publisher. I don't think that's every game company, but for the most part, I believe it's just that, hey, you can score this game, score fairly, but just make sure it's on day one, not day -1, -2, or whenever that date they set. What do you think about that? I guess
it's a bait and switch.
Okay.
It's saying that's how the business is done isn't how the business should be done.
Okay.
If a company, and this is an if,
okay,
not necessarily a when, but an if a company is, bumping up scores when they get those early copies to entice the company that's giving out the products early to continue to give it to them, if that's the business situation that's happening, they're automatically doing something that is not only untrustworthy, but is specifically deceiving the consumer that they are pretending to protect.
So are we working on an assumption then that this bumping of scores is a factual thing that's happening all the time? Because I have a hard time believing this. I guess that's where I'm...
Go over to the Wikipedia article that discusses Gamergate.
Okay.
It's actually one of the articles I have up here, one of the pieces of media. One individual you'll see discussed a lot is a gentleman named Eric Kane. He works at Forbes. We had a chance to interview him twice.
Okay, all right.
At the Rob and Dan show on the podcast. Very respectable individual. He's worked hard to make sure, practices are kept in an honest and good light, that he's very transparent about his ratings and his scores and his blog posts. He has missed out on products, at least from our research on that, although he did not agree to that during either of the interviews. Now, what he did say is that the practice of getting those early copies and having a quote-unquote gentleman's agreement to give a better score because you're getting early copies repeatedly does happen.
Okay. Now, so cool. No, that's good. So this is an accepted thing that's happening. So when a person like, because I find this really funny, and this is something that bothers me a little bit. When a person like, what's his name, Jim Sterling, who is an outspoken critic of the video game everything. He's been blacklisted by Konami. He's a guy who seems pretty legit, at least to me, right? Where, he takes blacklisting, he doesn't give a crap, he doesn't go to review events, he doesn't get this thing, and yet he continues to be berated for all kinds of other things, but whatever. But I think what I'm finding with Gamergate as a thing, you don't really want to talk about the hashtag Gamergate because it is a distraction, and I completely agree that it is a distraction. But when people like this, like seemingly pretty on the ball critics, critics that you think you'd want to have on your side as like, hey, this guy's legit, he's being blacklisted by companies, he doesn't give a crap, he's going to review the games the way he wants to review the games, blah, 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 blah. But he's the one who's getting hit on the most on this stuff, I feel like, he's the one that will speak out about Ubisoft calling nonsense about 30 frames per second of just like, spinning stupid lines that nobody believes and are obviously just PR stupid nonsense. And then he gets attacked on Twitter by so-called Gamergaters because he's going up against the publishers. And I feel like if this is a thing, and this is just me spewing nonsense here for a little bit, but I feel like if this is actually supposed to be a movement, and don't we not want to back up the publishers just as much as maybe we want to attack the media? Like, I feel like the media is getting all of the attention and the publishers are getting none of it, I guess is my thing.
That's a good point. Now, as to the subject of whether or not it's a movement and who or what this movement is targeting is the people that have done wrong.
Mm-hmm.
That not only is that subjective
okay.
to the individuals, but it's usually not based off of facts. Again, the reason I don't want to talk about the Twitter handle Gamergate, the people that they are specifically moving against, is because from what I've been able to research over the last few weeks, the people that they've been attacking are rarely the people at fault.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
It's a heart is in the right place, but you're not doing your research kind of situation.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Yeah.
Specifically, Jim Sterling, Jimquisition, for those that don't know.
Yeah.
He's a decent individual. He has definitely spoken out on things that Rob and I have agreed on,
mm-hmm.
and we would fully support him in that situation. I would, though, want to draw your attention to the fact that there is a very thin, tiny dividing line between reviewers and journalists.
Okay, that's fair.
Reviewers are flavor. They're always going to put their own specific perspective on whatever they're talking about.
Now, I don't want to interrupt you there, but what do you feel about that? Just as a concept.
As long as they identify and label themselves as reviewers,
mm-hmm.
they can do as they like.
Okay.
They're being responsible about themselves. And then the other side of it is the game journalists who provide unbiased, clear facts and information. They don't put their own spin on things. They present facts and information. And that is part of what people like Eric Kane do for Forbes, where they specifically report on certain situations in the gaming industry itself. I'm trying to think of a specific example. I can't think of one off the top of my head right away, but the point does stand that some of what Eric Kane has done, to use him as an example, has been journalistic work and not just reviews.
Perfect. Okay,
Forbes,
cool.
Actually, there are certain websites such as Forbes, such as Games Industry, such as Ars Technica, that works pretty hard actually to make sure the information they put out doesn't have spin on it.
Right. Okay, perfect. So I want to get back to, I feel like I'm actually asking all these questions. I don't know, they're just coming to my mind. I want to get back to the subject of Jeff Keighley, because I feel like, because you mentioned that he and his role in this has been fairly significant in being a spark of this. And my question to you is, has Jeff Keighley ever actually really been a game journalist? Because to me, his work on game trailers and Spike TV and all this stuff, like, I have never seen him as a game journalist. I've never seen him as a person going out there, getting the real info, digging deep, finding the dirt on stuff. Like, I've always seen him, especially, being a part of game trailers and Spike TV, as a person who is very, face value, being paid to do a thing. He is a PR person for whoever is going to stand beside him and talk with him, right?
True. Very true. But you have to consider the fact that a lot of that is marketing spin in the first place. Taking it a step back here, Jeff Keighley specifically is a game reviewer. He is a game reviewer. As far as I know, he has never been a game journalist per se. Maybe some of his really early work was, but I've never been able to experience that work, and as such, I can't comment on that. So
Okay.
there may have been a time where he was an active game journalist, and he decided to switch over more to reviews and flavor.
But does he even do reviews? And this is a real question because I don't think I've ever actually seen a Jeff Keighley review on game trailers or any site that he's been affiliated with. I feel like he's literally the person they put in front of a microphone because he does good interviews. But I've never seen him actually do like a review or journalistic work, so I don't think he fits either of those.
A game reviewer is a general. I really should
okay.
define terms. The game reviewer is a much more general flavor term for people that like to discuss games.
Okay, all right.
It's not specifically, okay, this person just does reviews. It's more of this person talks with a biased perspective or with their own flavor or spin on video games, or is a video game presenter for individuals or for companies.
Okay, all right.
Whereas the game journalist does not allow that exterior influence on information.
Okay, so I see what you mean.
It's a simple difference between keeping the information separate from the sources, or allowing those sources to kind of put a certain spin or direction on information you're presenting.
Okay, I see what you mean. All right, cool. Yeah, it's just because I've always felt like he was a very singular, different thing in the industry in general, right? Because he doesn't, he doesn't write reviews or whatever. He doesn't. Yeah. He's a very singular thing, and I think game trailers
hire him to do interviews, to do reports. Very flavorful stuff, though. It doesn't generally have a lot of those singular facts in it, which is fine. Again, I don't think he's ever claimed to be a game journalist. I've never heard of it.
And that's always what confused me about that being a particular flashpoint is like, yeah, it was kind of skeezy, him sitting there with Doritos and Mountain Dew, and it was a good funny time, but I never understood why people took that so seriously.
Well, it was a flashpoint for a very specific reason.
Okay.
And it's that when the event happens, the Dorito Gate event, as a lot of us like to call it, it was kind of a red alert moment where these people who we trust to, present information to us might not always be that. And again, Jeff Keighley has never claimed ever, as far as I know, to be a game journalist or a reporter. He's just a flavor individual.
Right.
But it did kind of wake a lot of people up to the fact that corporations are buying into the game journalism industry in droves.
Right.
And it kind of woke everyone up to actually looking at the money that's going into the industry itself.
Okay.
That's what really happened. And again, I've never really liked Jeff Keighley personally. I don't like his presenting style. I think it's very bland.
Yeah.
Personally, but that's my personal opinion. Whether or not what he did was wrong, I honestly can't argue, because again, he's never claimed to be a journalist. He's never claimed to be a consumer rights advocate like myself and Rob have been, where we specifically focus on making sure we present the exact important information that's going on for the consumer.
Yeah, like it might have been tasteless, but not necessarily wrong.
Exactly. It was, in my opinion, very poor taste, but that's a judgment call. That's not a fact.
Right. Cool. Yeah, no, perfect. I don't. So I don't know where to direct this conversation from here. I'm not good podcaster. But
Well, I guess a lot of people are probably wondering, what does this have to do with Gamergate?
yes, okay, yeah. So, what does that have to do with Gamergate? No.
Very simply put, all of what we just described is the underlying cause of Gamergate. I'm trying to figure out the best words to describe it. It is the unspoken, unacceptable relationship that can occur between game developers, the publishing houses, and the game journalists that is not only unspoken, but is actually sometimes kept hidden from the general purchasing public or the consumer.
Right. Okay.
And that is what I feel Gamergate is actually about.
Okay. Perfect. Orm has a question. He's going to type that question in like 20,000 seconds after he sees this, but
Twitch delay.
Yeah. Orm, ask your question. We will get to that. Yes, definitely. So I guess I agree with everything you're saying. I really do. And I feel like we are on the same page here, because I completely agree with everything. I feel like it's absolutely correct. That is wrong. It's something that's happening. I feel like I want to believe, and this is probably just me being naive more than anything, that it's not as widespread as we'd like to think. Again, it's probably just me being super naive about it, but I want to say that it's probably not as, it's not every. I mean, it's obviously IGN. That's like, I always hated that site, but we don't actually know. It's stupid, but you can point over there and be like, it's those guys, or you can point over there and go, it's those guys. And we can talk about that all day, but that's neither here nor there. I definitely agree with what you're saying, though. If this is a thing, if this is what's happening, this is a real problem that needs to be discussed. My biggest problem is not these things, right? And this is something this is why I get so upset when we continue to use. You hate the hashtag. I hate the hashtag. I think it's again a distraction. It's nonsense. But it's a really real thing, and I feel like we can't just divorce ourselves from talking about that, because it's taking over the conversation in a way that is really unfortunate to the people like you, especially, that are deeply passionate about the real, honest issues, right? What do you think about the idea, and this is something that has bothered me. It's just like, I would love to get on board with this. Like, I want to get on board with this. Like, what you're saying, and what people have told me and throughout Twitter and stuff, like the good, honest to goodness people that just want to see some reform, some change in the video game industry. I agree with you guys, but I can't be associated with the words Gamergate.
I don't blame you.
Yes.
I don't blame you. I don't associate myself with it either, because again, as I mentioned earlier, it has, in general, sweeping generalization has targeted the wrong groups or individuals in this situation. As you mentioned earlier, it's very harsh on the journalism side of things, on the reviewers, whereas it's kind of protected the publishing houses and developers in this situation.
Right.
Which is wrong.
Exactly.
It's the major corporations like Electronic Arts, like Ubisoft, like Activision, that have really spurred this on because of the practices of, oh, well, this group, they've given us a lot of very good reviews. Let's send this stuff out to them a little earlier to try and get more good reviews out there. Oh, these guys, they haven't really given us great reviews. Let's hold back just a little bit and send them out a little later.
Yeah,
so we're going to send them out, but we're going to send them out a few days or a few weeks later, so we get those good reviews out early.
And there's not even just that, too, because there's also the practices of of bonuses and real money for real developers being held back due to Metacritic scores, which is straight wrong. It's stuff like that. So it's not even just the reviewer publisher relationship. It's also just what the publisher is doing on its own.
How we treat scoring. This idea of you should just be able to rate a game on a 1 to 10 scale and say, okay, that's done.
Right.
That's wrong.
No, exactly.
And the fact that so many gamers go to the Metacritic score or go to just a single website to take a score from and then base their purchasing decision off that, it really makes my job a lot harder of consumer advocacy, of being able to say, well, no, you have really go to a lot of different websites, get a lot of different opinions, get some really, differing perspectives on the product before you make a purchasing decision.
Right.
But
yeah.
That's not how it functions most of the time, which is very unfortunate.
Yeah, like I've always told people, exactly, it's not even necessarily about finding a site that you like, because different games will be reviewed by different people or something. Find a couple of different reviewers that play games like you do. Like reviewers, like you said, you can't really review a game without putting your own personal spin on it, because it's your own personal experience.
It's that person's review.
Exactly, yeah, and find somebody that meshes with the way you play games. Like, I hate Assassin's Creed. I've never liked Assassin's Creed. I think they're just garbage. A lot of people love Assassin's Creed, so when an Assassin's Creed game gets a really high score, they're probably not speaking to the way I play games. It's a very technically good game, but if it gets a little lower score from somebody who doesn't like the fact that it's a little boring or something, it's like, oh, maybe you play games like I do. I don't know.
We have some questions and people
yes,
ready to go, and I'm ready to answer them if you don't mind.
Okay, so Orem. Okay, so hold on. Let's. I haven't actually been reading this.
They popped up there first.
Okay, hold on. Don't mind my ignorance, but what exactly is the deal with the Gamergate thing? I tried to understand by reading some of the things you had linked to Pixel, but I can't really grasp what the issue is. Could you help me out with this? I think that's sort of the biggest problem with Gamergate as a whole, is trying to get a grasp on what it is. The stuff that we've been talking about, that Dan and I have been talking about, this is the stuff it should be about.
Mm-hmm. As the Wikipedia article on the Gamergate controversy states, Gamergate is a controversy in video game culture which began in August of 2014. It concerns ingrained issues of sexism and misogyny in the gaming community, as well as journalistic ethics in the online gaming press, particularly conflicts of interest between video game journalists and developers. So specifically, it's discussing the issue of relationships or business activities that go on under the table between game developers and journalists.
Yes.
Now, again, I feel personally part of that is a distraction, but we haven't gotten to that yet, and we do have more questions.
Yes.
I've got to say, hopefully that gives you a general idea of what we're discussing. We'll get into more of this, though, in the next.
There's definitely more to it. There is the side of it that is a complete garbage.
We haven't touched on the sexism and misogyny side of things.
Right. Oramas, might we better be served by focusing on expanding gaming academia, such as Anna Skarsazian's work, if we want work that concerns itself with being removed from the pockets of the industry?
Mm-hmm. All right, so before we move on this topic, we should have a couple more quick definitions. First off, the definition of what a feminist is.
Yes.
Because this can get a lot of less intelligent individuals very riled up. A feminist, by clinical definition, is simply this: someone who believes women should have the exact same rights, privileges, and be treated the same as men.
Yes.
That's all a feminist is. So if you believe in equal rights, you're a feminist.
Yes.
It's nothing to be ashamed of.
Like, I've always considered myself to be a feminist. I have 2 twin girls. It's a very important thing to me because I want my girls to grow up in a world where they are human beings.
They have the right to be treated as human beings, to be respected as individuals, and to receive equal pay and equal treatment.
That's right.
Just as men do. That's a fact.
Yes. And whatever you think of modern feminism or feminazis or anything like that is, again, noise. It's not what feminism is.
There are always fringe groups
Exactly.
in any community. That's to
Exactly.
be expected. That's normal. One might even say that's healthy, although it usually isn't.
Yeah.
It's not unreasonable. Also, my friend Nobunaga, Lord Oda, is there in chat. I haven't seen him in ages. Hello, Nobu.
Oh, how you doing? So good to have new faces in here.
Yeah, I haven't seen him in months and months, so it's good to see him. Anywho, back to what Orem was saying. You're right, but I feel that's part of the distraction side of Gamergate. This is not something that has to do with what Gamergate is actually about. This is a major issue we need to resolve, but we need to separate it out of Gamergate.
Yes. No, I completely
Sexism
agree.
and misogyny is wrong. Plain and simple. There is no other way to look at it. It's wrong.
Right.
And at times, many of us that exist online can be accused, rightfully so, of being assholes. Absolutely.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You know, it's one of those things, right? Where I read it a lot on Twitter, and it's so simple, right? It's like we're all gonna be assholes. Yeah. Everybody at one point is going to be an asshole. It's the difference is whether you, when it's brought to your attention, apologize for it or defend it. And that's really the where it breaks.
Yes. Yes. There is never a good reason to defend misogyny or sexism. Ever.
Right.
If you've ever realized you've done it, there's no shame in that. Apologize, learn from it, and move on. I've done it before myself. I've realized, well, I screwed up there. Yeah. I said something that I really shouldn't have. I realized it was wrong. I apologized for it, and I moved forward in my life.
If there's a member of a group that you are not a part of, and you say something, and they say something to you, and be like, "Hey, that was uncool," they most likely know 100% more about what they're talking about than you do if you were not a part of that group.
Yes. And again, there's nothing embarrassing about that as long as you realize your mistake and move on. With that being said,
yes,
there are two specific individuals that are associated with this Gamergate issue that make it about sexism and misogyny. Okay. Zoe Quinn, first off, the primary unfortunate target of a lot of the harassment.
Yes.
And someone, your individual in chat mentioned, Anna Sarkeesian, who has done a lot of different things, who I actually have very mixed feelings on.
I'm the same way. Yeah, maybe we need to have a discussion about that at some point, but whenever. But
well, we can discuss it now because it is important to this. So one thing that people point to a lot is the different series Anna Sarkeesian has done, not just on YouTube, but throughout other organizations as well. Her successful Kickstarter was one of those. Now, with that being all well and good, there are major questions associated with whether or not Anna Sarkeesian actually delivered on the specific promises she made during her Kickstarter, and whether or not that money was received falsely and where that money has gone. There are major questions about that.
And rightful questions, probably.
It's important to ask those kinds of questions, but it's important to do it in a respectful manner.
Yes.
Quite directly, all right, we need to see the paper trail for this money.
And that speaks to anything on Kickstarter, right? Kickstarter is a very scary thing. Like where these games and these companies and these videos and all these things that are making so much money.
Oh yes.
I think not just I don't want to speak specifically towards Anita because I feel like she's getting really focused on about this, but I feel
she has received a lot of very unnecessary harassment.
Yes.
And abuse.
These are definitely very important, very real questions that do need to be answered. Whatever you think about the videos themselves, those are actually really important questions.
That I'm not going to talk about that.
No.
It's important to watch those videos, if nothing else, to get her opinion on the subjects. I think she does go a little to the extreme at times, but that's not a fact. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
That has nothing to do with the situation either. My only issue is, making sure that money was all received legitimately, that it's been managed legitimately, just like any other Kickstarter that may or may not have made good on the promises it used to get the money in the first place.
Exactly.
So that's my issues. My issues are ethically with Anita Sarkeesian. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry if I'm using big words too. Some of the people in chat getting a little confused. Sorry. I've spent a long time researching this. I've spent a lot of time into this.
Oh yeah, no, I love it. So this is actually a good question, and this is something that is very important to me. It's a very simple question. Why is the hashtag itself so bad?
Because it's a distraction. It's untargeted effort, and usually targeted at the wrong individuals.
Yes.
When it is targeted. It is a rabid mob mentality for the most part, which is a lot of what Twitter can be if you watch it and understand it in a specific way. It's built off of these mass rapid movements of individuals tweeting specific tags or specific hashtags.
That's right. Yeah. And what happens with these things, and it's just the internet in general, it's not Gamergate specifically, it's just the way the internet works is a certain group will get a hold of it and run with it. And a lot of the harassment, a lot of the stuff we're talking about that is just ridiculous and not cool and a distraction and dangerous and violent is being used under the hashtag Gamergate, when in reality Gamergate is not about those things. And it's the reason why, a person like me and a person like Dan, we can't really associate with Gamergate, because as soon as you associate with that, you associate with the bad, horrible things. And
the reason that sexism and misogyny was tied into Gamergate, and why a lot of it has become an unfortunate distraction and targeted against the wrong individuals, including a lot of harassment on specific female journalists and game developers, is an individual known as Zoe Quinn, who helped develop Depression Quest, a specific game built around having depression. So how did this happen?
Yeah.
How did all this get tagged together? As far as I understand it, there was an issue with a Kotaku journalist that Zoe Quinn might have been dating while she was trying to get Depression Quest activated on Steam Greenlight, and was trying to use that connection to push people to vote for it.
And there's been a lot of back and forth about this particular issue, and it's why I don't really feel like it deserves any more real conversation other than just to say this has happened. There's a lot of people that say that there was reviews and articles about her game and stuff while she was dating, which, from everything I've seen, maybe you've done some different research, but I feel like those things never actually occurred.
There's a lot of controversy as to whether or not they occurred.
But either way, at some point, we're talking about a woman's sex life.
That's absolutely unacceptable. Some of that information was let out by an individual at Kotaku. And actually, as to something that someone said, whose name is that? Rick Slamu 2. That's actually not true. Depression Quest was not just Quinn's. It's actually also an individual, if I can find the name, Patrick Lindsay.
Yes, I have heard that name. Yeah.
Was the other individual that made Depression Quest with Zoe Quinn.
Right.
It's not a big deal either way. I'm big on getting these facts.
Oh no, yeah, no. It's facts are good. Facts are good.
Now, the key here is whether or not the relationship Zoe Quinn had with the individual at Kotaku was abused to promote Depression Quest. Now, the people that have dug into this haven't been able to find it one way or the other. Some pieces of information, I'm not going to say facts, some pieces of information have pointed to it not quite being used, that this person was not necessarily directly promoting her activities, whereas a couple of the pieces of information point in the opposite direction. No one's been able to prove anything either way. The problem comes in, though, as you mentioned, when Zoe Quinn's sex life was brought into the attacks on her and brought into the argument, which is absolutely unacceptable. The questions that were being asked were these actions inappropriate? Did Zoe Quinn abuse this relationship? Did the individual at Kotaku abuse the power he had been given as a journalist to unfairly promote this game?
And of course, there is a tactful way to come at this situation of just like, there was a relationship. That's all you need to talk about is relationship. Did she use it or did she abuse it? You know, like, did she abuse it? Whatever. But of course, again, internet mob mentality couldn't just keep it there.
Yeah, and you guys, the people in chat are correct. That's what we're discussing. It was her boyfriend at the time that she was in a relationship with, who was a journalist at Kotaku, that then leaked all this information, including the information on her sex life, that started pointing fingers directly at her in an inappropriate way.
Yeah, completely inappropriate.
And how all of this got blown wide open.
Exactly. Grayson did write 2 articles mentioning Quinn's name in Rock Paper Shotgun and Kotaku. The pages have been taken down. Okay.
The dates on those are sketchy.
Yeah.
So, the dating is absolutely what's going to be the most important, and I don't know that off the top of my head. So,
sorry if I missed a bunch of stuff. I'm gonna scroll down here and try to get some more of the recent stuff. If you had a question, try just re-asking it. Okay, let's see here. Do we actually have a question? Okay.
Not seeing a question.
Yes, go ahead. If you found one. That's
I know, I'm not. I said I'm not seeing one.
Okay, then pinning all the sexism on. Okay, so let's just, like, pinning all of the sexism on GG. This is an attack anti-GG uses to defame GG. This is something that I have run into myself, where people are just like, no, you can't, no, guys, no, we're not talking about this, we're talking about other things, and this is what frustrates me most about Gamergate. This is the thing that sets me off. This is the thing right now. It's people needing this hashtag, needing this thing that has been just, like, blaming other people, not even the people that are doing it necessarily, not even the people that are jerks and just being awful, blaming the people that are calling it out, like blaming the people that are calling out the awfulness as though we are the bad guys. It's like, no, you guys are defaming GG. It's like, no, we're just calling it like we see it. And it's like,
the big distraction right now is the unreasonable, misogynistic, sexist attacks on these female individuals, whether they're a game developer or a game journalist, Nina Sarkeesian, or my tongue got tied up there, Zoe Quinn, or it's the anti-GG or GG hashtags going against each other. That is the distraction side of things that I was talking about.
Yeah, it's all distraction. It's all just like hunkering down and fighting for the wrong thing. Instead of fighting for a hashtag, you should be fighting for what the hashtag is supposed to represent. What
we need, and Nobu's asking this question here. What's the big thing you would change in the gaming media press that you believe would change the landscape to clear up many of the Gamergate controversies? I'm not going to try to legislate any kind of radical anti-misogyny laws, but obviously we need something like that in the first place. That's a greater issue, though, that isn't just associated with Gamergate, and I believe really shouldn't be part of it, where we need to focus specifically on oh my god, I lost my words.
Just the
I was
media
doing
side
so
of it,
well.
the media relation to the publisher side of
needs
it,
to
right?
be
Like
the publisher developer media
we
relations
need
that we
more openness
and
from the media.
while I'd love to be able to say, bam, misogynistic bastards get to rot in some kind of hole for a couple years and think about what they've done. As much as I'd love to be able to say that, that doesn't have to do with the actual issues at hand here. Misogynists are douchebags. We all know that.
Yeah.
At least most of us know that, and some people are
reasonable, thoughtful human beings know that is a bad thing.
If I was able to change any piece of legislation or add something to the laws on the books or try to change how society functions, I would eagerly and happily say, sorry, there's a spider here.
Spider!
No, I
God!
just crushed it. We're good. Everything's fine. If I was able to change one thing, I would distinctly say there needs to be guidelines and regulations associated with the relationships between journalists and publishers. Not necessarily developers quite as much. I think developers are mostly mistargeted in this situation because developers don't do a lot of the marketing
right
with games. It's mostly the publishing houses that are associated with marketing, although that's with the massive indie movement that's been happening the last 5 or 6 years.
They're also the publisher, and they're sort of everything.
Bit, so we definitely need to look at that a little more closely. But I think there needs to be a certain group of organization that's just keeping a general eye on the flow of cash or goods between publishers and developers and the media. Right now, the FCC tries, but they just don't do it. There isn't precedence set for this kind of situation.
Yeah, even if, I mean, and you see this a lot in the YouTube side, which is actually kind of interesting because there was this big talk about YouTube people starting to get paid off and stuff, but I find a lot of the times when it comes to the YouTube, with most people that are legit on the YouTube side, they're straight out with it. They're just so open and honest, right? Where they're just like, hey, I got this sent here. You should probably not even believe anything I say about this game, but I'm going to play it for a little while. This was sent to me by the publisher. And, you know, at some point, even if that's all that we got, you know, like this is aiming real low on the bar, right? This is aiming as far low as we can get. If we could just get the media to just say, hey, look, this is what we got from the publisher. We got this sent to us. Believe it or don't believe it, whatever.
Rick in the chat is putting both the linchpin of the situation and the great block to it all at the same time. This is both the problem and the cause of the problem. The fact that both game journalists and publishers and developers are making money off of this at the same time.
Yeah.
A lot of money, I might add. That's the problem.
Yes.
The fact that they are making money off this, both of the groups are. The game developers that are eagerly handing out these not necessarily fully truthful reviews are getting the most views because they're getting games a little earlier. And because these games are getting high reviews and high marks, they're being purchased. This is what consumer advocacy is about. No one's actually fighting for the consumer because there's no money in it.
Right.
Which is the entire problem.
Exactly. Yeah. Money on both sides. You're absolutely correct. Okay. As a follow-up and a member of the gaming media myself, how would you ensure people believed in those changes, the transparency, how you show people enough that they actually believe you aren't tricking them, etc., etc.? I think that's a problem that's almost not solvable, but you build relationship with your viewers at some point, right? Like a website that I follow a lot, giantbomb.com. The reason I follow that website a lot is because they talk about this stuff very
Yeah, Rob
openly.
actually is the same way with Giant Bomb. He loves them.
Yeah, it kind of helps that Jeff Gerstmann got fired from. He's been a part of this. He's been on that end, but that's not all. It's just every week they have a very open, very honest, very stupid, very silly podcast. Last week they got a question in the email, basically flat out asking them, "Hey, why do game journalists not ask tough questions of publishers?" And they answered it openly. They answered it. They answered it to my satisfaction, right? Where it's just like, look, we don't ask the questions because we're not going to get the answers. we've been doing this for 20 some odd years. We know what questions to ask because the idiots aren't going to answer the question. Why would I waste my time?
Money's not in the answers. The money isn't in there.
Yeah. And it's building that relationship, right? It's building that trust. You're not going to suddenly flip a switch one day and have everybody believe you and have everybody, but it's building it up. And
it's very difficult. Nobu's really hitting the nail on the head there.
Mm-hmm.
It's so difficult because once you've lost the trust of the consumer, the only way you build it back up is get people that the consumer already trusts to market your product for you, which will then destroy the trust of the consumer. It's a self-depreciating cycle, but one that when it isn't pointed out isn't even seen in the first place. It's the difference between good marketing and good consumer advocacy. One destroys the other all the time.
And I think the power is in the consumer's hand at some point, right? And the biggest problem is we're falling for it.
Yes.
Exactly. The quickest way we can make this not be a thing anymore is to not support it. Find a website that you can trust and go there. Don't, I'm not going to name names because nobody, whatever. Don't go to that big website you are pretty damn sure is taking this money. Don't go there. Tell your friends not to go there. Point your friends to a different direction. If there's a place where you can trust, go there and get your friends to go there, get the people that you know to go there. And if suddenly those views dry up, things will change because it's all about the money.
Absolutely. It's all, unfortunately, the entire system is all about the money, Lebowski. That's where it is. Nobu also pointing out, I've worked with him for nearly a decade. So
nice.
Not all journalists would say no to there being more regulations for that relationship between developers and journalists. Specifically, the people that like to call themselves actual journalists. People like the folks that work at gamesindustry.biz, specifically like the folks at Forbes, like the folks at the Wall Street Journal. A lot of these people are career journalists.
Yeah.
They make their living off of presenting facts and information. There are tons and tons of journalists out there in the gaming industry that will 100% support that. They're honest, good people. They really are.
And we got to remember, too, that there are human beings behind the keyboards of this stuff, right?
Yes.
And not everybody is making that money. There's a lot of websites that will have somebody write an article and they never see any of it. It's the suits in the head office that are making all the money, and it's the person behind the keyboard who has to write this thing making $20 or something. It's not the person behind the keyboard necessarily that is making all the money from all the views. It's the suits in the office. And I think we have to really remember that there's a human being behind the keyboard. There's a human being there. I think it's
important for everyone to remember.
Just in general.
Absolutely everyone. Rick in the chat brings up the person I was talking about earlier, Eric Kane of Forbes. Another person at Forbes, a guy named Paul Tasey. I can never pronounce his last name right. He's made fun of me before for it. Paul Tasey. He's an amazing individual as well. I fully support what he does as someone who tries to advocate for consumers. Both of these people are honest, good journalists. They're out there. They exist. The problem is they don't always get the money and the focus because the publishing houses want to focus on the people that are automatically going to give them good reviews no matter what, not the people that are going to ask actual critical questions.
Right.
That's the dividing line.
Mm-hmm.
If you ask critical questions, if you actually look into things, if you push and prod and poke and really try to understand a product, you actually have less chance of being successful in game reviews and journalism.
Oh yeah,
which
definitely.
is unfortunate.
And it's an awful. It's cool watching someone play the game during the review process. I think that's really
it's very important. Actually seeing the product in action, actually seeing gameplay. People that do that are automatically trying to push for an honest, clear perspective on whatever the product is.
And that's why important. I think that's a huge reason why Twitch has become such a phenomenon, right? Because of this distrust of the review process and just watching somebody just sit down and play the game is much. You get so much more information from that. It's just somebody sitting down for the first time playing the game and honestly reacting to that. And I think that's the fear, right? And again, this is all pointing towards where the money is going. And I think we are going to start seeing this change because suddenly Twitch and the streamers and everybody on this side is going to start getting all that money because that's where the eyeballs are, and nobody's going to read the reviews because they just can't trust it anymore. And if this continues the way it's going, something's going to break at some point, right? And a change has to happen at some point.
There's another cog in the system, if I might say.
Yeah.
There's a byproduct to honest reviewers and honest journalists asking important questions about products. It forces companies to really be honest and direct and actually cater to the customer, to the consumer, and work for the consumer instead of vice versa. A good example of that is... Let's take what happened with the new Assassin's Creed game that's going to be coming out, where Ubisoft specifically said, well, it's too much work to make the female models for players. That kind of stuff will be coming out more and more and more if publishers and if developers honestly and fairly give out copies of their games to every reviewer and journalist. Because the honest individuals are automatically going to give more informative, more accurate, and more fully completed reviews and information instead of just giving a 9 out of 10 or 10 out of 10.
Right.
Those people are automatically going to get more attention then, and it's going to give them more power to ask those questions about what's going on in the internals. Why is this happening? Why isn't this happening? Where did the DLC come from? A lot of the on-disc DLC stuff has happened and uncovered because those honest journalists have worked their butts off to get that information out there. And we should be thankful every day that they do so.
Yep. You know, they're doing more work than anybody else in the industry probably, and getting less and less. They're not even getting seen for it, and that's the worst. Is they need to be seen. They need to be getting the views. I love watching a female kick ass in a game. That's why I'm a fan of Tomb Raider. Tomb Raider's a pretty good game. I like that. Twitch has been using promoted content and recently had to open that up to transparency. Yeah, I mean, it's hugely important. Transparency in everything, even on Twitch, right? We're starting to see a lot more Twitch streamers being promoted by publishers and getting copies of games and stuff. And if we're not careful, we're going to start running into the same problem, right? As the traditional media, I guess you'd call it.
Let's take it a step back here.
Yeah.
Let's look at a lot of people. Some DJ Blue Ninja brought up Call of Duty. A lot of people have asked me, Dan, if you're so critical about things like Call of Duty, Modern Warfare, blah blah blah, whatever number we're on right now, and Assassin's Creed, why are they still so popular? It's a fair question. That's a reasonable question because despite my criticisms, they're extensively popular games. That comes from a compilation of marketing strategies. Quite obviously, the marketing usually happens about a year to a year and a half before the game actually launches, and it is a continuous campaign to the launch point and afterwards, usually about 6 months, 9 months. and the fact that a lot of these games, a lot of the Assassin's Creed titles, a lot of the Call of Duty games are not targeted to a specific group or individual. They're kind of this bland met of other games and previous features with a few new things thrown in.
They're not marketing them to us. They're marketing them to the people that buy a game a year, right?
To put it in a very simple and easy to understand format, these are the lowest common denominator of games.
Mm-hmm.
While they may not be very good, they are not crappy enough that most people can agree on them. It's not the games drawing the consumer to the games. It's the cults, the massive amounts of people and the marketing campaigns and the flashiness that draws the massive amount of consumers to these titles. The games themselves do not draw the consumers. It's the marketing campaigns and the amount of people already interested and the flashiness that draws them in. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, Call of Duty is one of those weird things with me because I play them every year. I'm one of those people. I'm the asshole buying them. It's because I have fun with them, you know? It's, you know, when you come down to it, when you want to boil down a game to no story, you know, I don't play the single player. If I just want to sit down and turn my brain off, I play a Call of Duty game and I have fun with it for a couple hours. And
it's the bland grayness that everyone can be like, well, all right, but it's not portrayed as that. It's portrayed as the next best thing.
Yeah, and it's Call of Duty is such a weird thing. Is what is due to fad status. I think Call of Duty has transcended fad at this point. How many years has it been ridiculously stupid? Take games Call of Duty for what they are. And also, it's a weird thing too because people always get on reviewers' cases for marking these games super high. And my biggest thing is we know these things happen in the industry. And my biggest problem is trying to understand that, yes, you know, some reviews are paid off, but not jumping to conspiracy theories at every turn as well, right? Yeah. Because maybe some person just enjoyed the game.
Yeah, and there is something to be said for marketing to the lowest common denominator. Is that a lot of people can agree on it. It is very mindless. Mm-hmm. It's not something like Dragon Age Origins where you're going to go through it and it's going to be a very immersive experience. And it's the Call of Duty game isn't going to be well written or well documented. There's not going to be any story behind it. It's going to be that mindless, I am just going to turn everything off. It's like watching TV.
Yeah. But so do you review a Call of Duty game for the Dragon Age video game player, or do you review Call of Duty for the Call of Duty video game player? And, you know, I was just trying to put myself in the brain of a reviewer. Right?
Well, if I've done a couple reviews on our YouTube page, on the Robin Dane YouTube page before. Personally, I would never review a Call of Duty game because I don't want my audience looking at that stuff. That's not the kind of audience I personally want to talk to. I'm talking to a more strategy or RPG based audience.
Yeah.
That's specifically the market that I associate with when I do a review, because that's how I play games. I wouldn't review a Call of Duty game specifically because it's not my area of expertise. It's not.
Exactly. It's why, like, even though I enjoy a Call of Duty game every year, I don't stream a Call of Duty game because nobody wants to watch that, because my viewership wants to watch me play JRPGs and anything else. But yeah, no, I sort of see what you mean there, for sure. Marketing. Oh wait, marketing may be the flame, but the shit game will not draw moss.
I could list a number of examples that says that's not the case. Yeah. Marketing around a game alone can sell millions of copies. That's whether or not that's the responsible thing to do, I can't argue here. Personally, I think it's immoral.
Mhm.
But the fact that marketing can sell games on marketing alone, it is a practice that does happen.
Mhm. My biggest problem, just with gamer talking about video games and being very angry about certain things, is not necessarily when the media starts talking about Call of Duty and that nonsense, but the other end of the spectrum. Right, when media gets so excited and stuff, and I love it. Like, this is something that I really love. But there's a huge segment of gamer culture, as I guess we want to whatever, that hates the fact that the media is so willing to talk about artsy games or indie games, or I'm specifically talking about like Gone Home, or even Depression Quest. I guess we can lump into this,
Sure. No, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And the anger that it spreads.
People who are angry that people are playing different games from them need to shut up.
Yeah.
There is just because someone has a different taste or different perspective on a product than you does not warrant you to attack that individual. I may be critical of reviews or whether or not a piece of literature or a document is honest, but I'm not going to automatically just say they're wrong.
Yeah, and I think
that's not how it works.
And that's exactly what I wanted to talk about just very quickly here, is that exactly, because I think there's a lot of people that, that want to be critical of things that are happening in the industry, and then suddenly that criticism turns into vitriol. Yes, exactly, where they're just like, now suddenly it's just like, every game I don't think is good, suddenly they're getting high scores, and it's like, wow, just relax.
Yeah, again, it's the difference between trying to present facts and information and giving into your emotional status about a product. If you're being emotional, you're automatically giving a personal perspective or opinion. If you're trying to present actual information, you're not going to do that. You're not going to start yelling and screaming and being angry.
Right.
It's not the case. That's not how you do it.
Yeah, and I think what this all boils down to, and bringing this back to Gamergate as a thing, is being upset and being, well, not even being upset, but just being. There's nothing wrong with. I'm blanking on the word. There's nothing wrong with passion.
No.
There's nothing wrong with passion. People know me. The people that watch my channel know that I am super passionate about a lot of different issues, a lot of different topics, and sometimes that will look like anger and frustration, but it's passion. I have a passion for this thing because it's something that takes over my life. Video games are a thing that are a major part of my life, and of course we're going to get passionate about it. It's when you start being negative and start attacking and start being actually angry.
It's the specific difference between speaking passionately and directly about something or personally attacking a person or group because of it.
Yes.
That's the dividing line. If you're going out of your way to attack someone, then you've crossed that line and you need to pull yourself back.
Exactly. Speaking specifically, like the thing with Zoe Quinn, she is a very dividing factor in video games. She made a thing that a lot of different people do not want associated with video games. And if it was just that, if this is just like, if we were just going to have a discussion, and a very passionate discussion, about whether or not Depression Quest, this thing that this person has made, is a video game or not, if it's art or not, or if it's thinking like that or not, that's a discussion that we can have. But if it's Zoe Quinn is ruining video games forever, she's a bitch, that is not a conversation we can have.
Not only is that not a conversation, that is disgusting and unacceptable.
Exactly. And that is what I feel Gamergate as a hashtag and Gamergate as a has turned into, when in reality, the good people, the mindful people, the thoughtful people just want some real honest answers and real honest change to things, important things that are happening in the video game industry. And if we could just leave Gamergate aside as a thing and just focus on actually asking and actually maybe even getting real honest answers and real honest change, I think it'd be better for everybody if we just left the nonsense out of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that's something everyone should take away from this, is that there's a very big difference between attacking people and asking very important questions.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times people who have tuned into the Rob and Dan show, the actual podcast itself, have thought I am directly personally attacking individuals and groups like EA or the COO or the CEO or the CFO of EA or Activision or Ubisoft, and that I have a personal destructive vendetta against those people. And that's what they assume is coming from me. But really, it's this. What the hell is that?
You hear something?
Yeah.
Oh, my wife is feeding the rabbit. Maybe that's what you're hearing. Is a rabbit. Maybe?
It just started scaring the crap out of me.
Oh no, I'm dropping frames suddenly. I think my internet just went to crap. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, I think we're good. It's
good?
coming back, maybe? No, dropping frames. Why don't we actually end this here? Well, I think we had a really good discussion. Oh, I'm now at 0. We usually just have to wait this out, and it'll come back at some point here real soon. Hopefully.
It sounds like it's your connection to Twitch itself.
It's really weird. It's been happening for the last couple weeks, and I have no idea what it is. I've changed. Yeah, I changed a bunch of different stuff. I think it's my router. I think I need a new router. Maybe, like, I don't want to end it just because they're not going to see us saying goodbye. It's the worst. It's the worst thing that ever happened. I want to find mythical arcade cabinet. Force everyone to play it. I usually just have to wait this out, and in a couple minutes it'll just pop back.
I think they can hear us, they just can't see us.
Okay. Well, why don't we call it a night? Thank you, Dan, so much for having this conversation. I'd love to do this again sometime. This has been awesome.
It's my pleasure, and certainly if you can grab Rob on this, he's going to have a slightly different perspective. Whereas I tend to focus a little more on regulating corporations and companies, he's more focused on the market regulating itself, and journalists really kind of doing their own job to make sure they fact check themselves and the peers around them.
Right. Oh, I would love that. If everybody, if you don't know, if you're one of my followers and you don't know who Dan is here, he is Dan from the Rob and Dan Show. He is an amazing streamer. They do all kinds of stuff. They pro video game commentator awesomeness. I put the link in the description. Click on that. Give them a follow. They absolutely deserve it. They're wonderful human beings. Thank you guys so much for being here and being awesome as always. Hopefully,
we just fully came back.
Yeah, we just fully came back. Yep, nope. So unless there was anything else you really wanted to talk about, I mean, I'm good for whatever.
Honestly, we touched on the major subjects. I would strongly advise everyone to really focus on the matter at hand.
Yes.
Obviously, do not under any circumstances tolerate sexism or misogyny in your personal lives or in the people you consider friends or fellow gamers.
Mm-hmm.
A gamer is anyone who games.
Yeah.
Very simply put.
Whether
it's male, female, trans, gay, lesbian, etc., etc. They are human beings. That's what's important.
Never feel bad about apologizing. It's the easiest thing. There's no shame in it. In fact, it makes you a better person. If somebody says, hey, that made me uncomfortable, or hey, maybe that wasn't so cool, be a good person. Be a real human being. Admit to your mistake and move on and be a better person for it.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the only way all of us will grow.
There you go.
Thank you, guys.
I need to pass out here. Tomorrow morning, I'm really excited. I'm starting back up the Heroes of the Storm stuff.
Oh, awesome. Perfect.
Last phase of alpha. Hopefully open beta here soon. I'm hoping.
So is it good? I don't want to get into a conversation, but have you heard good things?
I have. This, if people don't know what this is a limited edition Heroes of the Storm Hall of Fame lanyard. I got this because I was one of 50-something people who got level 40 during the first phase of alpha. There are only 50-something of these that exist.
That's rad. That's super rad.
I love the game. I have been playing it quite a lot. I have gotten back into it since a couple weeks ago, and I'm gonna go back to streaming regularly on the weekend mornings.
Oh, that's awesome! I can't wait to watch it.
True Rage Rune, you can join me as much as you'd like tomorrow morning. Not tonight. I'm passing out.
I'll try to make sure to host it if I catch it. All right.
Oh, no, don't worry about it.
Thank you guys so much. Peace out. Have a good one. Thank you again, Dan, for being here and just having an amazing conversation. This has been awesome. All right, I'm gonna close your screen now, button, and I'm gonna play the outro. And you guys are awesome. See you tomorrow at 5 o'clock for more World of Warcraft, because that's a game I'm playing, I guess. Bye.